So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Center's 2021 Project Lead Spring Summit. We sure wish we were in person and could see all of you, but we are delighted to Zoom with you and see your faces. So share your cameras as you would like, type in the chat questions and comments, and participate vigorously. We have what we think is a wonderful agenda for you this afternoon. And that is a tribute to all of our Project Lead College partners, Illinois College, Lewis University, Rockford University, Quincy University, University of St. Francis, North Central College, Illinois College, and Greenville University. Thanks to all of you. Yes. Yeah. Hands up. Absolutely. Represent. Please represent. All of this is made possible today by the generous support of State Farm. And I want to do a big shout out to our liaison at State Farm, Lisa LaDonna Cooper, who is an angel, a guardian angel in disguise, always looking out for the good work that all the folks in Project Lead are doing. So again, a shout out to all of our ambassadors, to our faculty who have been working with us, to our friends and supporters, and a big thank you to State Farm. Here's our agenda for the afternoon. You've just heard a little welcome from me. We're gonna move right into what we think is a pretty ambitious agenda with stories from our teacher advocates. Then we're going to go to stories from the literature because last November at our fall forum, ambassadors and faculty selected about 8, Dr. McCarty, was it about 8 different books that they'd like to engage in. So we're going to engage in some dialogue around those books. We're going to come back together with Annie and Erica, who are going to help us work through sharing our own voices, telling our stories, me, us, and now. And we'll learn a little bit more about that initiative. And then we are so excited to share with you this afternoon a celebration of our Project Lead ambassadors who are graduating, as well as all of our ambassadors. And we'll ask you to share some feelings with us at the end and invite you to some other events that are coming up. So there's the encapsulated version of the agenda, and let's move on. Dr. Shah?
Hi, everyone. I am so jazzed for today. I'm wearing my Project Lead shirt, as I always do to these summits. So anyway, my name is Jenny Shah. I'm an assistant professor at North Central College. I'm ending my 3rd year there. I love to get involved in initiatives that talk about anti-racism and equity, particularly in education. So it is my honor and pleasure today to introduce you to 3 exciting, very cool people who are doing some awesome stuff. I know that Keisha was going to join us at 1:10, so I'm going to introduce Marlena and Corey first. And then I'm going to look to see if Keisha's joined us and then introduce her as well. So my dad always taught me to be around people who were much more successful than me. That was a tip that he used to give me. And I think I get it now. What he was trying to tell me was it's been a long day of teaching and other things. What my dad used to tell me was surround yourself with people more successful than you because you're guaranteed to learn something. And our 3 panelists today are nothing short of absolutely amazing. And I know that all of us have much to learn from them. I want to thank each of them. I know they have busy schedules and they took time out today to be with us to share their insights. So thank you so much from all of Project Lead to the 3 of you. So I'm going to start with Marlena. I'm so happy to be introducing our first guest speaker, Marlena Ceballos, today. Marlena is a current doctoral student at Lewis University's Educational Leadership for Teaching and Learning doctoral program. She's a product of the Chicago Public Schools and is currently a bilingual special education teacher in Chicago. Here's the coolest part. Marlena is also an international activist. She has presented on the struggles in education in Brazil, in Mexico, in France, in which members from all over the world were present. She continues her work as an educator, as an activist, and as a student while overcoming health challenges. So welcome, future Doctora Ceballos. Next up, I am very honored and humbled to be introducing somebody that I went to grad school with, Corey Winchester. Corey teaches U.S. History and Sociology of Class, Gender, and Race at Evanston Township High School. He also serves as the coordinator of Students Organized Against Racism, or SOAR. If you missed his TEDx talk on this topic, you will have to watch it. It's called Teachers Educating Radically, and it's super, super powerful. Corey served for 4 years on the board of directors of Evanston Scholars, which is a nonprofit college access and success program supporting first-generation, low-income, and students of color. And if that wasn't amazing enough, this is the really cool part. Corey is a Golden Apple 2019 award recipient and the 2020 Illinois History Teacher of the Year, awarded by the Gilder Lehman Institute of American History. Corey is also a Teach Plus Fellow. If you look here, the picture that I have on the slide was taken when Corey found out that he was a Golden Apple winner. And I just love how it captures his excitement regarding the award. I believe that's when it was taken. He earned his bachelor's in education and social policy from Northwestern University, his MED from our shared alma mater, Loyola University Chicago, in cultural and educational policy. And he was actually honored by Loyola as a notable alum in 2016. He is now pursuing his EDD in educational leadership at DePaul University. The next time that I have the honor of introducing Corey, I will have to call him Dr. Winchester. So welcome, welcome. Do we know, Jan, do you see if Keisha's on?
Here.
Oh, hi Keisha, hi. Okay, I wanted to be sure that you were here before I started. I'm so honored to introduce you to somebody that I follow pretty hardcore, even though she might not know it. I'm so honored to introduce Keisha Rempert today, as she's become somewhat of a role model for me. Keisha is a middle school teacher here in Naperville, where I also live, and wears so many hats in education that we would be here all day just talking about what she's accomplished. Most recently, though, Keisha played an important role in the development of the culturally responsive teacher leadership standards in teacher preparation, which I followed very closely. And she often writes for edweek.org, where I love to read all of her publications. So well written. During the pandemic, Keisha also launched a web series called The Miseducation of the American ... So it's kind of like a fill in the blank. The first episodes really center the experience of the Black community, and they're really, really powerful episodes, and you can watch them for free. Her bachelor's degree is in English from Boston College, and she has her master's degree in elementary education from Chicago State University. She too is pursuing her doctorate, and we can't wait to see what is next for the future Dr. Rempert. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I do want to share that the picture of Keisha is specifically from a time that she did an interview and read with the cast of Hamilton. There was a read aloud with the cast of Hamilton, and my kids particularly enjoyed that. So just wanted to point that out. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time and we have a lot of material to cover. So we're going to follow this sort of pattern of me, us, and now, as that is the theme of today's spring summit. So the order that we're going to follow is that I'm going to read the question. We're also going to have it in the chat feature, and Dr. Fitz is going to stop sharing after I share these questions, but we'll be putting them in the chat feature if you'd like to have a visual representation of them. And we're just going to follow the order of Marlena, then Corey, then Keisha. And I'm just asking everyone to kind of keep their answer to like 2 to 3 minutes. We'll let you know if you're going too long because we have to fit this in a certain amount of time. So these are the questions we're focusing on today. The me, tell us about your story and how it led you into education. From the variety of hats that you all wear in the field, which one is most meaningful to you and why? So that's going to be our first question. The us question is, in your opinion, what are the biggest issues related to equity currently facing educators? What's your opinion regarding why purposeful and sustainable change is so slow moving, as we know it is? And then, of course, we know that you're all involved in activism. What's the most current initiative that you've been a part of that has motivated you to keep working towards equity? So I'll reiterate those questions, but I just wanted everyone to kind of get a sense of where we were going before Dr. Fitz. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the first question into the chat feature. And then we can begin with Marlena. Sorry, just give me just one moment.
Sure.
Okay.
While you're doing that, I just want to quickly introduce Cubby. I have a little assistant. He sits on my lap sometimes while I teach because my students are all autistic, so he's my little assistant and they love him and it gets them engaged. So a little bit about me. I am first generation in my family to go to college in general. I'm getting my doctoral degree at Lewis University. Erica, yay, Cubby. I was always within my community. I was in a lot of different programs. One of the programs that actually started me like being a leader was called Aspira. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but Aspira was created in an attempt to fill the gap for the specifically Puerto Rican community, and just getting educated, and I could go on, but basically like to try to encourage students to overcome challenges that we go through as Latinos, Latinas, and attend school, or just have better opportunities given all the oppression and circumstances that we've been forced to face with our families, and being a part of that. So eventually, like I really loved, like I was always playing school or like being a leader, playing outside with my friends, teaching people how to play a game. Like it was just very natural to me. And I ended up throughout my education, trying different programs, little internships I landed, teaching after school programs, community programs. One of them is called Casa Central here in the city. It was just something that like kind of fell into my lap very naturally. As I became a teacher in CPS eventually, and I started traveling on different delegations, as she mentioned, the first delegation I went on to Brazil really opened my eyes. We happened to go, and it's really crazy. All of the experiences that I happened to have, they kind of just land in my lap. Like, it's just like something's going on in that country when I'm there and some revolution is starting. We were there the month before the national strike of Brazil. And the president at the time, or former president, was in prison, Lula. And it really opened my eyes. That was my first time traveling abroad, except for Mexico. And it really opened my eyes to the parallels that I seen. And it built a fire in me, and I came back. I did an internship at CTU. I learned how to organize. We did a lot of door knocking, met with a lot of teachers. I helped coordinate, oh my God, I almost closed myself out of the meeting. I helped coordinate a lot of strike actions, different civil disobedience, things we wanted to do just to really push to get everything we needed in our contract. And we did have a lot of wins, but definitely we didn't win everything we want. So the major thing when we're organizing and leading strikes and things like that is like we usually try to ask for something really big so that we get enough. And it's never enough, because the needs that we have to meet are huge. Teaching in the city and being a product, I've seen the change that I remember growing up and going on field trips and school being fun and playing, and just like I loved school. And now when I see how limited I am with the students that I serve, even prior to the pandemic, it makes me very sad, because honestly, sometimes I don't know if I would have been as successful as I am now had I been in the same situation that my current students are in. The hat that I wear that's most meaningful to me is my teacher hat. As an activist, I get burned out sometimes. And it's like, there's never work. The work as a teacher is never done, but the work as an activist is like even more. So when I'm with my students, it's something that brings me peace, and it makes me happy. Like I can't explain it. I think you can see it in my face. It's just really beautiful. Like even now I'm working with cluster students. So these are students that have severe disabilities, and many are nonverbal as they're autistic. They always have a smile on their face. And to be so vulnerable and to still smile, it's really inspiring. And I think all the teachers you can relate, or the future teachers, everybody that's here, we just have those moments that, especially servicing this population. Yeah, I don't know how long I talked.
That was so powerful. I felt I couldn't jump in and be like, no, we're out of time. I couldn't do it because I wanted to hear everything. I wanted to hear every piece of it. So thank you for your response, and I can't wait to see what your answers are to the other questions as well. So I'm going to move on now. Same question. Tell us about your story, how it led you into education, from the variety of hats you wear, which one's the most meaningful, and we're going to throw it over to Corey.
What's up, good people? How y'all doing? Yes, I need that little bit of energy because my kids are not giving it right now. So my story, I'm a big Hamilton fan. So this idea of like who lives, who dies, who tells your story, that's something I think a lot about. And I think I have a pretty compelling one when it comes to like why I'm here. So I'll try to keep it brief. I'm from Philadelphia originally. Born and raised West Philly, like Will Smith. Yeah, the jingle, I get it. Hear it every time. And I grew up in a really loving and supportive family. My mom was young, relatively young when she had me. She got pregnant at 19 and, was a single mom until she met and married my dad. In that time, she, along with my family, just really worked to support her and me in raising a young, Black child, a Black boy. I thought was something that presented many challenges. So when it came to schools and going to public school, I think that my mom and my granny just tried to make sure that I had the best opportunities when I could, and they found ways to advocate. And so my first grade teacher, Miss Gray, who y'all remember these old school things, right? This is Miss Gray right here. We are still in contact. We are still connected. But she did something, really remarkable. I don't know if you can see our first grade class back in 1994, 95, but it was what was representative of, Philly at the time, and our community, which was mostly Black. And she did something. She kept us together for 3 years, which is pretty rare to do in a big public school setting. And she did that because she got to know us, she got to know our families, and she really cultivated a community of love, which is something that I think is absent in many of the conversations about what we do as educators. And so, during that time, I learned how to be me. I was a nerd. You can call me a teacher's pet, but I just like learning. And when we all went our separate ways after third grade, she went and taught in London for a year. I went to a new school, moved to a new neighborhood, and we kept in touch. I was an usher in her wedding. when I was in 6th grade, and I knew her family. I met Miss Gray's mom and her aunties. We actually traveled a couple of places. When I reflect on those experiences, I realized that she took me on my first college tour. Um, and yeah, she's been a huge part of my family. When my granny passed away, when I was in 10th grade, her Miss Gray and her mother came to the funeral. She was at my high school graduation, she was at my college graduation, and she was at my Golden Apple celebration. And I think that's a testament to the relationship piece. When I graduated from high school, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher because I liked when the aha moments went off with the young folks. I mean, they were like just a couple years younger than me that I was tutoring. I went back to visit Miss Gray and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna teach elementary school." But then I stepped into her class and I saw her like helping kids tie their shoes and they had boogies in their nose, and I said, I don't have the patience. So I went into secondary, and history was something that I always really enjoyed. Um, so tie that with being one of the 46% of Black boys that graduated from Philly Public Schools in 2006, where the school district is 66% Black. And in my head, I'm trying to figure out like, why is that? Why was it essentially left up to a coin, like a flip of a coin, as to why I was able to graduate? And I thought that if you had a teacher like Miss Gray, everything would be fine. And that's before I really learned that all these systems were designed to do exactly what they had produced in that space. And so I went to school. I came here to Northwestern with every intention of going back home, and I've been here 15 years later. I teach, U.S. history and sociology at Evanston Township High School. I've learned a lot about different systems of oppression, and really have had the opportunity, like through this work as an educator, to understand more. I think one of the things that's often missing from this discourse about what we're stepping into is that historical context, that our school systems aren't really designed to teach folks and have these experiences that I have, and folks really have to make an effort. Teachers really have to make an effort to bring in and infuse that love, because schools are actually places of trauma, historically speaking. And I think that's something that I learned, and not wanting to replicate that, I think has been what my labor of love is in the classroom, and what I do as an educator. So that's my short spiel. And to the second question, what's most meaningful to me? It's my kids. It's the kids at the end of the day. I think what's been extremely powerful is, so I've been teaching for 11 years, and I have currently 3 former students who are history teachers, and 2 who are on their way out. They graduate this year. And so, I think about, teaching 1,500 kids in my career, and thinking about the ones that have influenced, who have decided to become history teachers. And I think that's been the most rewarding thing. And I got to stop here before you start seeing tears.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I do think you have a very special relationship with your mom, which you have shared on Facebook and other social media. And so I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are family ties that have gotten us to where we are, as well as other systemic things that have led us to where we are. So thank you for sharing that. And last but not least, of course, we have Keisha.
Well, I have heard this Miss Gray's story, and every time I get emotional because I wish I would have had a Miss Gray. So thank you, Corey, because I feel like through you having her, I have had her, just in hearing her story. And I agree, Jen, it doesn't start with me. Actually, I am the daughter of migrants who fled the Jim Crow South, and came to Chicago to escape the horrors that they were experiencing in the racialized South. And my parents grew up picking cotton late into September because they needed to help their family and help bring money into the home. And my mother used to say that it was the best education she ever got. was that month of September, because she said that there is no job more demanding than that of a farmer or a laborer, and that and that really every job that she would hold after that, whether it was she was a cashier at Harold's Chicken, she was the vice president of employee relations for a major healthcare system, but she said because she knew the real work of the South, that she could prepare, plant, nurture, wait, pick, and repeat. And so, and she could apply that logic and that persistence and patience from the fields of Mississippi and Alabama to the offices and boardrooms of Chicago and Massachusetts. So I start there because the story and the sacrifices of my parents are my own. And it also goes back even to my elders and my ancestors. They are the reason that I sit here today. My parents thought and instilled in my brother and I that one of the ways to beat an oppressive system was through education. So I attended Catholic schools, K through 8th grade, which in their minds were better than Chicago public schools. And even though they were blue collar workers at the time, and my dad worked swing shift at the steel mill, they made sure that they paid for my brother and I. I'm getting a little emotional because like that was something that they did for us out of their undying love because of what they had experienced. So education really was a ladder for them. And when they put that ladder in front of me, I wanted to climb it because I had seen their efforts. And I didn't initially go into education. I was a English and journalism major undergrad. I wanted people to put a microphone in front of my face, and I wanted to be that person sitting across from Meghan Markle and saying, "Really?" But I really have found that I'm able to do that in the classroom. I'm still able to do that. It was in college that one of my professors said to me, "You would make a great educator." And I thought, they don't make enough money. And it wasn't until I had done a year at a news station and decided that that wasn't for me that I thought, where am I going to land? And that professor's voice came roaring back to my head. And I start substitute teaching. And I still get to be Oprah, y'all. I still get to ask those probing questions in my classroom. And I get to share my favorite things, which are books and knowledge, with my students. So I still get to do all of the things that I had really dreamed of doing. And so education has, I think that your calling chases you down, and my calling chased me down. I still think that the most important role that I play is teacher/learner. So I think that it's kind of a hybrid there. Being in community with my students and learning with them and from them really is a gift to me. And the fact that I know that I'm sharing things that will impact others as I prepare future teachers is really just the icing on the cake for me. So that's my story, and I'm sorry I got a little emotional there. I didn't expect that.
You had me emotional. I had tissues. I knew that this could happen. So I was prepared. I was so prepared. I thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It means a lot to me. It resonates with me too. My parents are immigrants, not in the same way at all, but I was not born in this country, but I feel like I was raised by this country, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, I know the experiences of my parents, and my mother was a full-fledged lawyer. Like, she had a law degree at one point, and then had to come here and work in a convenience store. Sorry, emotional. But when I asked them, because they were a little bit older in their life when they came, they were in their 30s. And so I asked my parents, who were decently well off in their home country, and I said, why have we come here? Why have we come here? Why do we come here? And one of the things that they said was, because of you. You were going to be very limited when we were over there. And here you have all kinds of possibilities that are at your feet. And last year I won the teaching award from North Central, and my dad, who doesn't use words a lot to encourage, said to me, you know, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. The sacrifices were worth it. You're making us feel like it was worth it. And that to me means more than gold, right? So anyway, did not plan on sharing all of that, but there we go. So we're going to move on to our second question very quickly so that we don't focus on my crying. Okay, so we're going to move from a focus on us as individuals and our individual story to more of our collective story and our collective struggles. So I've put the question into the chat feature if anybody needs to read it. And to be fair, I'm going to go in reverse order this time. So I'm going to start with Keisha, I'm going to move to Corey, and then I'm going to end with Marlena on this question. So in your opinion, Keisha, what are the biggest issues related to equity currently facing education and educators? We know there are many. What is your opinion regarding why purposeful and, more importantly, sustainable change is so slow moving?
So I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now in education related to equity is a normed educational violence that looks like education, but is really schooling upholding white supremacy and creating conditions like we see that's on it actually in the backdrop of my television, the Derek Chauvin trial. So educational violence looks like so many things, and it looks to me like the disparity of educational funding. It looks like an over-reliance on standardized tests that can only destroy, not only destroys schools, but also destroys communities because of communities' economic tie to schools. It also looks like the adultification of an erasure of Black girls in schools. It looks like English only policies. It looks like a lack of curriculum that centers students' experiences. And it also looks like educators who don't question that curriculum, that don't decolonize curriculum. And it is also status quo teaching. So I think educational violence is this big umbrella that has so many different variables. And not just for students I'm trying to move away from saying students of color. I've been educated recently that we should say racialized students because race is something put upon. And so racialized students and marginalized students. And I think we have to ask ourselves, whose school experiences have we centered and continue to center? And I think that is a question that will get us to movement, to change. One of why change is so slow is I really believe it's out of fear. I really think that change is slow because of fear. There's a fear of reimagining and rebuilding a system. When I say in spaces, we need to burn it down, people look at me like, girl, slow down, stop, hold up. And I'm like, no, we need to burn it down. This educational space was not designed for me. And Corey alluded to that. And so why wouldn't I want to dismantle it? Why wouldn't I want to rebuild it? We are taught on an agrarian system that was for white land holding men. So it was never meant to be inclusive. So it makes sense that we would rebuild and restructure it. And in saying that, I think that there's fear around this discussion of power and privilege, because by doing that, by dismantling the system, then I am potentially leveling a playing field. And I think that there's also this fear of telling the truth. As history teachers, there's a fear of disrupting a master narrative and acknowledging that knowledge is varied and that intellectual norms are steeped in whiteness and subsequently really not valid. That there are so many ways of knowing. And we need to expand those ways of knowing and acknowledge that our students come to us with knowledge, that my parents who when they were in the fields in September, they gained knowledge, and and by dismantling it and by looking to create change, that's the essence of collective freedom. And so I think about, it goes back to what Baldwin says to me, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And so I think that's what education has become, and that's what I think what we need to focus on in order to disrupt it.
What a powerful answer. I feel like I just want to keep talking more about this. Like there's just so much to unpack. I'm currently reading The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. And she does such a wonderful job of talking about how it's not a zero-sum game, and that we go into these conversations or these conflicts thinking that if you get more, I get less. And we need to disrupt that thinking before we can really move forward, right? Really just burn that idea down, as you were saying before. Thank you so much, Keisha. Thank you so much. Corey, we're going to move to you. Just a reminder that the question is in the chat feature if you need it.
Got it. Thank you, Keisha. Keisha mentioned Baldwin, so I had to really quickly change to someone I think who inspires me in a lot of work that I do. Keisha has always been a bit of a role model and a big sister for me when it comes to this work, and I just want to build on that. And someone else that I think, if you haven't read Dr. Bettina Love's work, We Want to Do More Than Survive: Abolitionist Teaching in the Pursuit of Educational Freedom, I highly recommend that you do, because I feel like this is where she does a lot of synthesis and gives some context about, yes, Jenny, I see it. But for folks that are really wondering about context and the biggest issues facing educators, like Dr. Love's work is a really great synthesis of that. And I feel like what continues to harm us is that we actually haven't confronted the reality of how education has been set up in the United States. Who it was set up for, what it was actually set up to do, which wasn't really about this idea of teaching and learning in the benevolent way that I think we often hear, or in this idea that education is supposed to be this leveler for us, because it hasn't been that, right? As I alluded to earlier, like schools have been places of trauma, sources of trauma for Indigenous folk, for Black folk, for folks of color. I haven't heard the commentary yet about racialized versus folks of color, so I'm gonna still use folks of color. I think what actually is limiting us from making changes to this really oppressive system are a couple of things. And I'm gonna tie this into work from another person that I have learned quite a bit from. Charlene Carruthers wrote this book called Unapologetic, a Black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. One of the things that she talks about are the ways, and this is, with particular respect to Black folks, but I feel like the same sorts of trauma exist for other folks of color. How white supremacy has killed people's ability to imagine because so many folks have been trying to survive, right? And I feel like there's a couple of things at play, right? It's the intense and insane amount of violence that we have experienced at the hands of these systems, right? And the violence, what folks, may not realize, I'm not talking about folks in this space, but just generally speaking, violence isn't something that's just physical. Violence is mental, it's spiritual, it's emotional, right? And these forms of violence are the things that are taking away from folks' ability to imagine and dream freely, right? And one of the things that I really love about what Bettina Love shared, she said, what if Black kids had, access to, do and be their great selves? We could have had the vaccine for COVID long before, this all happened. And, I really think about how these systems have stopped folks from being their full human selves, right? So I think that's one, to build on this idea of fear. White supremacy doesn't want any of this to change because of the belief in things being taken away, that there is a zero-sum game, right? And I think that's something else that we have to really work to do. But again, like as a history teacher, we don't really know our history, right? So there's a quote that I have on my wall in the classroom. It says, "No history, no self. No history, no self," right? And there's a play on the word "no." There's one is N-O and the other one is K-N-O-W. And so I think that also ties into this idea of what we know. When I'm teaching my kids U.S. history, and this is something that I had to go through a process of, like, how much stuff did I actually have to unlearn before I actually knew about some of this history was not sanitized, right, or whitewashed. And part of what we have to do, and I'm borrowing words from history professor Hassan Jeffries, is that we have to stop with this educational malpractice, right? If a doctor came up to you and told you and diagnosed you with cancer when you just had a cold, that's malpractice. But yet what we do as educators is that we often replicate these forms of malpractice in limiting folks to different forms of knowledge, or knowledge about themselves, right? And we invalidate that. That's malpractice. And I think we have to really work to stop doing that. And when you add in violence, that fear and this malpractice, those are all aspects that contribute to why this change is so slow moving. And we do just gotta blow it up. So Keisha, when you find the dynamite, let me know. I'll bring the match.
I want to join that as well. One of the things you said, Corey, really reminds me of something that Isabel Wilkerson wrote in her book Caste. And one of the things that she writes about so many things in that book. If you haven't read that one too, all of you, I would highly recommend that one. But she also says, like, we don't even know who the greatest leaders could have been because we limited them, right? Like, we as a society could be somewhere completely different right now if we had seen leadership for leadership, right? And recognized good leaders, period. Right? But we limited our leaders, or our natural leaders, as she calls them in the book. And so I think about that a lot, is like, where would we be, right, if we weren't, to use Keisha's words, racialized, right? If we weren't racialized, where would we be as a community and a society? So thank you for all of your insights. I'm going to move to, hold on. Do we need the question in the chat feature again, or are we good? Marlena, do you want me to copy and paste it again, or you want to just scroll on up if you need it?
No, I got it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Marlena.
Before I start, I just want to say, like, I really resonate deeply with everything you guys were saying. I don't know if I'm gonna cry or go off on a rant and be angry. Cause like when you guys were talking about blowing the whole thing up, like literally, I have a student who like, I'm like your teacher who like follows her students forever. And there's one in particular who, oh my God, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but he's in high school, he just had a baby, and he's talking about he's not going to school. So I've been, pardon my French, up his ass. I'm like, you better go to school or I'm gonna show up at your house. And he's one of those in particular that I've stuck around with for a while, because certain ones, they just, you know, they call you more, they refer back to you. I've been at 6 schools in 8 years in CPS for different reasons, usually or mostly because I'm an activist and I'm also a hothead. So I don't hold back. Like, I'm ready to burn stuff down. And he was like, I forgot what I was telling him. I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't you in school? I know it had to do with something crappy going on with the way he was treated. He was suicidal before when he was in middle school. So I knew there were some deeper issues. And eventually we just got to the point where like, let's just blow the whole thing up. Like, just burn it down. And seeing him now more grown up, it was just an experience to see. But I wanted to start off with the second question, my opinion regarding purposeful and sustainable change and why it's so slow. And when I think about my experience, and I've been very blessed, right? Because I've been able to travel the world and build these connections that I tell you literally just fall in my lap because I'm being a social butterfly. And sometimes I just used to do a lot of political stuff for fun. Like when I go to therapy, my therapist is like, well, protest doesn't count. And I'm like, well, you know, like that's the only thing I have time for. But the biggest thing that I've seen and the biggest parallel that I've noticed is that educators are often like, we are attacked so hard in so many different ways. And Keisha, like all of the things you name, like the educational violence is real. And I can't believe, I don't know if I've ever heard that term before, or if maybe it's just coming back to my mind now. It just got like cluttered and dug away in my brain somewhere. But oftentimes you notice it's always like the teachers, you know, starting with the basic thing that we see across the globe, right? We're not paid enough. We're expected to do all these hours and to overcome, not even not paid enough, but maybe if I were given everything I needed to do my job, maybe if I had a full-time nurse at my school during the global pandemic, like it's just so simple. It's like, why? And this is where I get into the political side where I said I might go on a rant, but why is it that education, not just teachers in general, but why is education targeted so much? Why is it underfunded? Why? And these are the questions that we need to be asking. And not just asking, but actively seeking answers to. Because even when I go to these conferences sometimes, when I presented a question on, like, I was talking about making Pearson an international boycott, right? Or an international target, right? And literally like crickets were like in the room. And I'm like, well, what are we gonna do? This is a conference. There were more like, I think the CTU, we brought like most of the youngest teachers. So we were very young and radical, and they thought we were cool with our shirts that said defund police and dismantle ICE. Coming from the United States, it was a powerful image for us to have. But, you know, it takes work. It takes talking to people. It takes figuring these things out. But if you think about it, like the elite, the governments, they're the ones that control the wealth. And when we think about how funds are distributed, right? It's from all of our institutions are I'm trying to stay focused and not go on a rant, because I've been out of politics for a while. Since I started the EDD program, I was like, I just don't have enough time anymore. So I'm totally out the loop. But the way that our governments in the world control and distribute resources, and they work with these corporations, it's frightening. Because the majority of people need help, whether it's access to food, access to housing, access to better education. All of these basic fundamental human rights aren't provided to people. So at times, sometimes I really get frustrated and I ask myself, well, why? Exactly the same question, like, why are we moving so slow? If we're the majority of the people, why haven't we gathered together? And that's why sometimes I just, when I get into the activism, I don't stop. And I keep going and I keep going, and it's easy to get burnt out. And I think I'm scrolling up to the other question. In your opinion, what are the biggest issues around equity currently facing educators? Specifically, I'm going to focus specifically on Chicago right now. We have, what we're fighting for is, oh my God, now the term is leaving my mind. But instead of funding our schools based on the property taxes, right, that are in the neighborhoods, we want to switch to, and don't quote me, I could be wrong, I'm not sure if it's student-based budgeting. But the goal is to kind of close that gap. So if you think about, Chicago is a very diverse neighborhood. We have houses with multi-million-dollar homes, and then we have houses where people are living in tents for a full block under, a bridge. And being a product myself, I've seen those things, because when I went to my elementary school on the west side, and then I went to high school on the north side, and I'm in this science class, and I don't know what I'm doing. I was valedictorian in my school, elementary school, 8th grade, and I go here and I feel lost. And it was very clear to me at that time, I didn't know I wanted to be an educator, but I can see the inequity across resources. And it wasn't that I wasn't as smart as those kids. That may have been how I felt at the time. It was that I just was not provided with those resources. There isn't a consistency. But sorry, Erica gave me my timer and I got nervous.
Yes, we are running a little bit low on time.
But basically, yeah, the access to resources and the distribution of funds.
I think those are so important. I remember a time I had the chance to speak actually at Project Lead right after the amazing David Stovall out of Chicago. And one of the things that Dr. Stovall said that day was, what we don't need more of is the status quo. And I keep coming back to that in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to move us to our last question, and this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to try to keep this super brief because we're approaching our time limit here. And so this time I'm going to do Corey first, then Marlena, then Keisha. But so in kind of a very quick little snippet, almost like think of it like a post on social media. Oh, did I not put it in the chat feature? Uh-oh. What is your best piece of advice to future teacher activists who want to join the fight against the oppressive systems in our school? So Corey, it's going to have to be like a little snippet. It's going to have to be quick. I know this is heavy, but what is your best piece of advice?
My best piece of advice is to build community. You can't do this alone. And oftentimes, our work happens in isolation because we're locked away in our classroom with our kids. But you got to remember to find your folks. Find your community. There are people out there that are, really pushing and advocating for change. Find those folks, get them behind you. Know that you're not alone in this work.
Thank you, Corey. And as somebody who I liked to have in my community, I really appreciated you being here today, and being able to connect with you means a lot to me. Thank you. So I think we're going to go to Marlena next. So Marlena, what is your little tidbit of what's that advice?
So she got kicked out of the Zoom accidentally. So she's trying to get back in. So maybe we can let Keisha share. And if not, she's going to tell me what to say. So we're going to move with it.
Sorry about that. Technology, we never know, right? Keisha, would you like to go?
Sure. I was just going to actually ditto to what Corey said. Finding your community of support, and you'll need them. They'll sustain you through and energize you. And also understanding that teaching is a political act, like Lori Latson Billings told us, and that because it is a political act, it is also an act of resistance. And you'll need those people to fuel you and to remind you of why you started this.
Awesome, Keisha. Thank you so much. And as somebody who doesn't live that far from me, I'm hoping that maybe sometime this summer we can meet in community and
I'm
share.
fully vaccinated, so
Yes,
yeah.
me as well. So I'm hoping that in the future we can have some good times. So I think I'm noticing that Marlene.
Marlene is back in, so let's see if she can share. Marlene, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, I was having tech issues talking about access to resources. What was the question?
So
Sorry.
the question is, no problem. The best piece of advice in a short little snippet to future teacher activists who have joined us here today to join the fight against oppressive systems in education.
Find good mentors, and don't feel like you have to do everything. Don't burn yourself out, because the fight never ends, and it's very easy to feel that way. It's very easy to get lost in it, but identify your support systems, keep those around, and even if your support systems change, continue to find other support systems and reach out for that support, because it's very easy the burnout is real, especially when you're teaching and trying to be an activist on the side.
Thank you, Marlena. I will have to echo that. At one point, my daughter wrote on a Post-it note, "Mommy, please just be happy." Because there's so much surrounding me and my work right now related to, I mean, we are all facing this right now. There's just so much going on in our nation and around the world that I feel sometimes really caught up in it. And I have to remind myself to take care of my own mental health and take care of my own emotions, because if I burn out, I am not good in the fight, right? So I have to take care of myself so that I can be ready to fight when I need to fight, right? So I think those are really great words of advice from everyone. I want to take just a moment and thank from the bottom of our hearts our 3 wonderful, amazing teacher activists who joined us today. We want to wish you good luck in each of your doctoral programs. We can't wait to read your dissertations at some point. So thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know, Jan, did we want to do any kind of, does anybody from the audience have any particular question? I don't know if we were going to go down that route because we are at 2 p.m.
Anybody have a quick question? This has been a powerful panel. I see comments in the chat. I think as I look out there, I think I see lots of people ready to strike the match. So thank you. Powerful. And check out the chat to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
So on that note, we're going to move to our next segment. We'll do a little bit of technology here. And share our screen. And thank you to you, Dr. Shah. Much appreciated for leading this extraordinarily powerful panel. Great launch for everyone. Thank you. So Dr. McCarty, you're on.
Hello, so Dr. McCarty from Quincy University. And first of all, thank you, Jenny, for getting the panel together and leading that, and to our fabulous speakers. So that was really great. So next up is the books that we read this time. Usually we choose one book and it's a common read for everyone, but this we did a little bit different. We had about 7 or 8 books that you guys chose from. So on the screen, you can see that the long way down a couple fiction books, The Long Way Down, and then Juliet Takes a Breath. I know some of you guys read those. And then we had plenty of the nonfiction to hear people's stories and the things that they have overcome, from everything to be how to be anti-racist to the I'm Still Here and the Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. And then another one was Me and White Supremacy. And then we also had that Whistling Vivaldi, which was about stereotypes and how to overcome them. So just really fabulous books. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put people randomly into breakout sessions. And then we want you to do a few things when you get in there. We want you to introduce yourself, just kind of tell where you're from and your major. This is a good time to just start networking with other students from across the state. And that's my dog, sorry. You probably, don't get a puppy before a pandemic. And she's actually like a 90-pound puppy now. So anyway, so introduce yourself and start networking with other students, and then you can like meet up with them on social media too. So later. And then talk about which book you read, share that book, and then maybe share a quote or a passage from it, something that really resonated with you and that you would just like to talk about. And then really think about how the book will change your daily life or how it might change your teaching. So kind of share those with your small group. And at the very end, you want to come up with a bumper sticker slogan of 5 words or less. And then when we get back together as a group, every group will share their bumper sticker, and we'll also put it into the chat box. So,
can I jump in for 1 second? This is Annie. I know I have some students here that weren't at the last summit and may have not read one of the books and didn't have one of the books. So I just wanted to let them know that's a totally okay. You still have a lot to offer and contribute to the conversation and to the topic. So even if you didn't get an opportunity to read one of the books, we still want to hear from you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
please feel free to share, another title.
Yeah, just share something that's impacted you in your life. So perfect. Thank you, Annie. Any other thoughts or?
I think we're good to go. You know the MO here. Click join, and we'll see you back here in about 25 minutes.
Year at Rockford University. I'm actually student teaching right now. And I also read Whistling Vivaldi. Well, I read part of it and then I kind of stopped reading for a sec. I have not finished it yet, but I would like to.
Whistling Vivaldi happens to be one of Dr. Fitz's favorites. I happen to know that. Savannah?
Hi, I'm Savannah. I am a freshman at Rockford University. My major is special education with a minor in ESL. And I read A Long Way Down.
By Jason Reynolds, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Does anybody have anything, and maybe we could start with Whistling Vivaldi and then kind of come.
Change anything. So I'm just so proud of both of you. And I'm so excited that you get to meet my friend, Dr. Davia, today. she is a professor at Lewis University, and she teaches doctoral students. So maybe after you go through my urban ed program, once you become teachers, then you can go to Erica's doctoral program and get your doctorate. So,
You guys hear that? Or is that-
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, I was getting some feedback.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm wondering if one of you would like to move to 4, either you or Annie.